open your eyes. Open your eyes. Oh, I mean open your surface. Well, open your eyes, then open your surface. You know what I mean, just do it, okay? It's too blazing hot in there and you have to get the temps under control. I have a bloody kingdom to save and all you have to do is make your computer run cooler. Talk about first kingdom problems.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it. So if you have no idea what the heck you're watching, the real point of this video, all funniness aside in the intro, is I'm going to be attempting a nightmare level repaste job on the Surface Laptop Studio 2. And there's probably no reason to do this because I don't really have thermal issues necessarily with this device. However, PTM7950 does give some advantage. So I'm going to run benchmarks before and after to see if this is even worth doing. But maybe I'm just weird, but this is probably one of the hardest devices to actually repaste. And to give you an idea of how hard it is to repaste this device, I don't think anyone has actually ever done it. Comment in the comments if you have done it before. However, I cannot even find, not only can I not find evidence of anyone ever doing a repaste on this laptop, I can't even find a picture of the heatsink on this laptop. I found it for the previous version of Laptop Studio, but even then I can't find one that has an NVIDIA GPU. It's literally an unknown what the thermal pipes and the connections look like on this laptop. And there's reasons for that. It's an expensive device. If you screw this up, you're going to have a bad time. Not only that, but the main board does not show the chips facing up. It's actually flipped, and the chips are sandwiched between the underside of the board and the keyboard. So even if you take the back off of this machine, you don't have direct access to the heat pipes. You've got to then disconnect literally every single connector, speaker, battery that's connected to the main board to be able to lift it off and pull it off. To put that in more perspective, there is a 90-page service manual, and 19 of those pages are dedicated just to removing the main board itself. This is no easy task, and I'm going to see if I can do it, but I'm also going to record my results from a stock perspective, and then after I get the PTM7950 on there to see if it made any difference in terms of throttling or heat. And then from there, we can determine if it's actually worth doing. Now, I'm not doing this for absolutely no reason. I'll also be installing an 8 terabyte SSD onto this machine, making it a completely maxed out 8 terabyte 4060 13700H Surface Laptop Studio 2. And yes, you may be thinking, I thought he already reviewed that and he hated the screen. Yes, that's true. It's absolutely true. But I love everything else about this device. And anyways, let's get on to the nightmarish attempt at repasting this laptop. See if we can do it. Okay, I've done this before on camera to replace the SSD, did a video on that, but we'll go ahead and just cover what we're doing. We've got the Surface Laptop Studio 2 upside down. We have our PTM7950 ready to go. We have a new SSD ready to go, and we have our iFixit kit, which includes an array of screwdrivers, tweezers, picks, and everything we'll need to take this apart. So the first step that it says is removing these 4 connectors. And you can see it has 4 connectors for the display because this goes up into the fabric of the display, and they need to be super flexible. So we've got these thin wires, and it needs to be spread out completely flat. So this is this is no easy task, but we're gonna go for it. Okay, we now have the Surface Connect to deal with. Okay, at this point, I'm going to flip it around. Okay, I think we're at the point where we should be able to remove the motherboard. I believe. I don't think that the fans have to come out. I'm putting my screws literally where they come out of here because I've noticed they're all different lengths. Even though they say 1, 2, 3 in the service manual, they are different lengths. That's everything. Oof, it is loose. Moment of truth here. Okay. Wow. Let's turn it over. More shielding. Wow. This is interesting to say the least. Wow. Do I really want to try to get through this? Let's find out. Here it is, the elusive backside of the Surface motherboard. Now it's pretty obvious that, wow, they really engineered this thing, didn't they? Okay, the tape's obviously going to have to come off first. I guarantee they did not expect people to get this far into this. But I don't know. This is C Butter's channel. We do what no one else will. Probably because we're not very smart, but okay, so there's little notches that clip on periodically. There it is. Ooh. Hello, GPU. And there it is. Wow. This is quite interesting. We're finally there. With as much work as they've done here, I seriously wonder if the repaste is going to be worth it. It better be. There it is. Woohoo! Look at that. Now I'm slightly curious if they intended for this chip to have absolutely nothing on it. Do you see that? The left side of this chip has nothing on it. That can't be good, can it? Although maybe it doesn't need it because the heatsink obviously is not even made to touch it. That's really interesting. Okay, so we're deep in the bed of the beast. We've got screws everywhere, hopefully mapped out so we can remember where they go. And we're about to clean up this mess. Okay, so I am going to repaste this as well and use some K5 Pro. It seems like the right application for it. So we're gonna go with that. There's also this paste on the underside here. I am gonna clean that up. It seems like it's not, maybe not quite doing what it's supposed to do. It doesn't look like it was making good contact here. Okay, got everything cleaned up. What I'm gonna do from here, I've got my little finger condoms. Okay, I'm gonna try to lay down my PTM7950 first. It has been in the freezer, so it is quite cold. And now place it. There we go. And now use the tweezers to pull off the backing. Looks like I need to clean the memory modules a little more. Okay, so next step, K5 Pro. What's funny is what Microsoft already had on there was kind of similar to this. Alright, so I guess it's time to close this baby back up. So it's going to go on like this. Just want to make sure I line it up really well. And before I close it down, I want to make sure that K5 Pro looks like it's really evenly on there really well. Alright, here goes nothing. So I almost feel like I want to, well, no, I better do, I'm going to do an X pattern. Yeah, it's always a temptation to like try to improve on their methodology. Like I'm really tempted to put some K5 and like try to get it to notch up to there, but that's pretty steep. I'm also tempted to put K5 on there to increase the, you know what, they're doing it here. You can see right here we need to put more goop because this shim needs goop on it to go here. So let's do that. I'm really tempted to put some of this right on top of the CPU to aid in the cooling. Because they do have spacers on the back. So even if I did put it there, it would only help spread the heat around, so I'm going to do it. They probably did it here because they thought, hey, we really need to get some heat spread for this GPU RAM. But it seriously wouldn't be a bad idea. Okay, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Okay, I'll do it a little bit. Just over the CPU. Okay, so we're going to get these back into place. and putting pressure on top of those inflection points. Get this back on. Again, these plates connect via, I thought it was solder, but it really, there's little dots, and you have to unnotch them periodically, like every 1 inch. There's notches that tuck it into place, and it is difficult to get off, but it's not impossible. You can hear those snapping into place. Okay, we're going to smooth that over, and we're going to really hope that our liquid metal's working for us in there now. Not liquid metal, sorry, PTM7950. And put a little pressure here, so that heat's getting spread all through there. Don't want to forget to tighten this down. It's my biggest fear right now, is missing a screw and having to go back. All right, say goodbye to the back of this thing. Probably the last person to see it. Okay, I'm gonna flip it how it was earlier. Now all that's left is to install the new SSD. Alright, time to plug the battery back in. And we're back in business. Let's hope we did not miss anything. And it won't hurt if you need to. If this isn't sticking, you can use a heat gun. And there we go. Now, do I dare? Or if I completely destroyed it? Yes! Well, we got a screen at least. Probably thinking, what did I just go through? What did you just do to me? And there we go. Success. Now we got to see how well it performs. Hey, so guess what? I did it. The nightmare, worst case, hardest thermal repaste of a laptop ever. And it was a doozy. It took me about 4 hours to pull that off. Highly edited, still a long video, but let's look at the performance difference. I'm just showing you that it is working. It's all back together after all of that. And let's take a look at what it did for us in terms of performance, because there's some interesting things here. Let's go ahead and look at the results. Okay, so let's look at total system power, because ultimately, if we allowed the Surface Laptop Studio to pull more watts from the wall, it means it's operating efficiently enough that it can maintain those wattage. So the red line that we're seeing here is before we put the 7950 in, and the green line is after having done the 7950 repaste. So you can see that the SLS2, before we put that in, was a lot more erratic. I think it was reaching thermal limits on the CPU a lot more. In fact, you can see that in the red line that not only is it pulling less watts, but it also is very erratic. And I think that's due to it being right up on the red line of temperatures on that CPU. But you can see that green line is a lot smoother. And you even see in SLS2, you see this weird dropout where it probably overheated a lot and it triggered something to, hey, you got to pull the watts down, and then it bumped back up. But the green line's super consistent. And even when, I guess I should explain my test as well. So I run both Furmark and a CPU loader at the exact same time at the very start, and I leave it in laptop mode. And then at 2 minutes and into the test, which is 2:20, after getting everything started, I switch it to tent mode, because we know tent mode can improve things, and then I switch it back to laptop mode at 4:20. And so you can see here, when I switched it to laptop mode before the 7950, it must have been pretty hot in certain areas, and it really throttled things back to cool things off for that, open laptop mode. And then putting it back in tent mode, it bumped it back up. But we're seeing very consistent afterwards versus before. Now let's take a deeper look into that. So on the top, I still have total system power, but then I'm showing the GPU power and the CPU package power. And what we're seeing on the CPU package power is, wow, it maintained higher, it pulled a lot more through, used higher clocks on that green line all the way across the board on this. And it even seems to do that a little bit at the expense of the GPU power that it's pulling after a little bit. And I think that's because I put that extra dollop of K5 Pro right on top of the CPU to spread it to that heat spreader. I don't know if that was a good idea or not, because when I did that, it's allowing the CPU to operate cooler, but it's coming at the expense of GPU power. So because the GPU is directly connected to those heat shields and spreads the heat across the heat shield, I don't think the CPU is necessarily supposed to do it. do that. It is helping the CPU. So if we look at the CPU temperatures, that'll work. You can see that it starts off being cooler than it was. But what you see is because it is pushing more performance, it, like for instance right here, you see the temperatures dip before we had the PTM paste on it. But that's because the CPU started using almost no power because it got slammed down. So even though this is hotter in some sections of the test, it's because it's doing more work. So that's why it's really hard to compare just temperatures. You got to look at the total overall performance of the device, which is why this graph, the total system power, you can see that it can use more power now because it's not overheating, and it can give more consistent power all the way across the board. In fact, yeah, let's go ahead and look at frame rates, because you can see this was what ultimately would translate into the type of performance you'd get. And we can see, although this is only measuring the GPU test, so maybe it's not a pure example, but good enough, because if you look at our green line after pasting, we're getting much higher frame rates across the board. And even when things settle in, it looks equal, but then the red line drops out because it's overheating in certain ways, and the green line continues to perform. And then when we move it back to temp mode, it bumps up again to a higher level. So one more super relevant thing is I had run a Final Fantasy 15 benchmark test on the stock Surface Laptop Studio 2 and got a 9288 score. And then after repasting, even though I did not overclock, I did not change any settings at all. And after the PTM 7950, I got a 10,222, which was a pretty big bump in things. That was about a 10% improvement. And hey, I'll take it. Usually you'd expect you'd have to tweak the GPU clocks or something to do that, but it must just either be more consistent and or able to boost just that little bit higher that gave you that much better Final Fantasy 15 score. So that was even without any overclocking. If I then did overclock it and pushed it to 150 on the core, 150 on the memory, I could get a 12449. So it seems to be helping overclocking as well. That's the highest score I've ever gotten with any Surface Laptop Studio 2, as I've owned 2 at this point and have benched each of them. So it seems to be performing really, really well. So I would say that all in all, this was a successful venture. It did work. We got better frame rates. We got cooler temperatures for the workload we were giving it. But basically, we let it work harder because it can operate more efficiently, more cooler, thermally efficiently. So I would not recommend this. I would not recommend doing this at all. But there are benefits that can be made with your device. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this. If you have questions, comments, or ideas, would love to hear about in the comments, and we'll see you on the next video.